Hello and welcome to Frank's School. This is the 100th day. My dog's here. The 100th day of the third year. And you know, I've quoted this often in my school. Alle Anfang sind schwer. German for all beginnings are heavy, are difficult. Well, this is a beginning. This is a beginning. Class vocabulary yesterday was not a beginning. I had done that before. And I'll do that tomorrow. I'm going to go every other day with class vocabulary to give you time to comment, hopefully to see if I can make that work. But today what I would like you to do, and I'll give you the link in the description of this course. I'll give you the link so you can easily go right there with a click. I'd like you to look at the first 12 minutes and 30 seconds of James Burke's series, The Day the Universe Changed. The first episode, 44 minutes long, is called The Way We Are. He made this around 1985, I think, somewhere back in there. And he also did a series called Connections. He's an interesting man. This is an example of the humanities. This is art, science, philosophy, well, history of science. He would call himself a science historian. Art, architecture, and it uses history. He uses history throughout. Now, whether it's right or not, it's entertaining the way he does this. I call it razzle-dazzle. He zips around from place to place and from age to age to make his point. And I don't know what you'll think of it. I believe the entire series is online. I don't know if you're going to want to watch it with me or not. I might even recommend that you skip certain parts. For example, there's about 4 or 5 minutes of this which deals with the United States, there's words for it, it's the NORAD or something like that, in Cheyenne Mountain, deep underground, the defense system for the United States. He goes there and he talks about that. I myself don't like looking at that, the jets and the bombs and the missiles. In 1985, the Cold War was sort of still going on, and you know, for others it's probably just, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. To people that live there, especially somebody like me, it gives me a really dreary feeling to see that. It seems like maybe things are different. Anyway, the point that he's making at the beginning that I really want you to hear is that we are what we know, is what he says. What we know affects what we see and what we think. And he says it better than I do, but more complicated. When we learn something different, the universe changes. That's why it has this name, The Day the Universe Changed. It isn't a day necessarily, but at different times we've learned new things, especially in the West. This is largely about Western culture. And when we've learned those new things, it changed the whole universe for us. He does a good job, I think, of that. You'll see. We'll see what you think of it. But at a personal level, I want to read something to you. It's a paragraph. Because I think for me, what happened, you know, as I was watching this, I started to watch this now because I wanted to continue to learn. I had seen it before, and now I have more leisure to think about what's being said. And what I was realizing was that for me personally, the universe changed about 1971. Sometime between about 1966 and 1973, the universe changed for me. I say this is at a personal level. It has to do with Wedge's paradigm. And from that point I learned things. And the trouble is I learned things that other people didn't know. And so, again, at a personal level, I lived my life since about 1971 or 73 on, in a way, in a different universe. I had suggested that Wedge's paradigm and the other things related to it may help you to understand why I think so differently from others. And I believe I do. I sort of have hidden it. But in any case, I don't want to get too heavy with this, but I do want to read this. It shouldn't take too long. I'm not making this up. I'm just reading what I had written. I wrote this about 1973. There are many perspectives from which the history of man can be viewed. From the perspective of the economist, human history appears linked by significant changes in what man produces and how he exchanges it. From the perspective of a political scientist, human history appears to have been guided by the changes in the foci of domination. From the perspective of the student of philosophy, human history can be clearly seen as the development of man's conception of the world. These are perspectives commonly used and with which we are all familiar, since they are basic to our educational system. But there are others, some quite uncommonly used. From each perspective, human history appears a little differently, as if human history were a huge hall filled with pillars. When we change the perspective, some things become visible and some things become hidden from view. Taking a look from an uncommon perspective is a somewhat hazardous thing to do, but the experience can also be very enlightening. And it is from such enlightenment that we approach this book. The perspective from which we view history is that of a decentralist. You see, this is the first paragraph in what I've come to call the Decentralist Manifesto. It leads up to Wedge's paradigm. I don't know, I think at the moment I'm not going to do too much more with that, but I became a decentralist at some time during that period. And it's, maybe if I had to just give a single word, I don't like the fact that it's a Latinate word, but that would maybe be the single word that makes my thinking so different from others. Well, anyway, we'll see where this takes us. I don't know. I would not recommend that you go on, because it's too, back to James Burke, it's too complicated. I think it needs discussed as you go. And if you're a classroom teacher and you're going to try to use this in the classroom, I would say don't go too fast, because things are going to be lost. There's so much to be learned from this series. Well, there you go. I've got it started. I'll see you tomorrow again with class vocabulary. I hope I have a comment or two before then. Bye for now.